In the previous video for this build with Kartesian drivers, I assembled the enclosures, drilled and routed a few holes, and glued dampening material to the inside. You can watch that video with the link above right or in the description below. This week I continue starting with application of the walnut veneer. A PVA wood glue is applied to the sides and then the veneer is clamped between the enclosure and two offcut ply boards. I use some wax paper to avoid any glue to stick to the plywood offcuts. I am releasing build plans for these speakers, which you will find on my website at soundblab.net. There's a link in the video description below, so go check that out. Once the glue is dry, the clamps and ply boards are removed and the excess veneer is trimmed with a flush cut router bit and palm router. Before veneering the back panel, the board is sprayed with a matte black spray can paint, since it is difficult to veneer over the round overs of the board panels. Once dry, the board is masked off, as well as masking off the veneer already applied to the sides to avoid squeeze out glue sticking to it, and the veneer applied in the same manner as before. While waiting for the glue to dry, I can continue to finish the front baffle. This process starts with a coat or two of sanding sealer, then filler primer, a normal primer coat and the top coat, sanding in between coats with 320 grit sandpaper. The final coat is a clear coat in matte. Back to the veneering process, clamps are removed and any excess veneer is trimmed and the entire enclosure is sanded with a 320 grit sandpaper on an orbital sander before applying the water-based polyurethane. This finish is my Rust-Oleum and I am very impressed with the finish it gives. I apply 3 coats with light sanding in between, again with 320 grit sandpaper. For the preparation of the crossover assembly, I start by arranging all the components on a paper template and then use a center punch to mark the positions of all the components. The holes are drilled and I can also transfer that to the second crossover board. The final crossover is a simple second order electrical circuit with an L pad on the tweeter to bring it to the right level with the mid-woofer. The components are secured to the boards with cable ties before turning the board upside down to solder the leads together according to the schematic diagram. As said before, the crossover is simple and from the frequency response that is already quite very flat, approximately plus minus 1.5 decibels from reference, there are a few areas where the response could be tweaked further. However, during my listening test, this proved unnecessary and not worth the extra cost. The graph at the bottom shows the inverted response, which shows very good integration at the crossover point. The simplicity of the crossover really highlights the quality of these Kartesian drivers and that they are fairly simple to work with and still achieve excellent results. The impedance graph also looks good with nothing unusual. It's a nominal 8 ohm speaker with it dropping to its lowest point of 6 ohms from around 6000 Hz upwards. Kartesian sent me these really beefy binding posts for which you see me here drilling rather large mounting holes for. However, I will specify more practical binding posts for the build plans. More on that shortly. The wires for the drivers and the binding post to crossover is cut to length and then grouped and soldered to the crossover according to the crossover schematic. The board is then secured to the inside back of the enclosure just behind where the woofer will go with a few screws. Back to the binding post, I had to make some tabs from copper to be able to secure the wires to the binding post. These binding posts are so beefy that the average soldering iron has no chance of heating them up enough to secure a proper soldering connection to them. Something like a butane torch would probably work, but I don't have one, so for now this is my temporary solution. Holes to mount the drivers are marked and drilled, and then the rest of the dampening material is placed inside the enclosure. I only apply this to the bottom of the enclosure in the cavity behind the port, behind the mid-woofer, and some in the top of the enclosure behind the tweeter. You can also see here how I thread the wire from the binding post to the crossover through the holes in the braces, and also use some damping material around the wire to avoid any potential rattling. I want to take a moment to thank Kartesian for sending out these drivers to me to do the speaker design and build. They have done an absolutely fantastic job of engineering really very good drivers, and I feel privileged to be able to partner with them and share this with you all watching this video. You can find out more about their product range on their website and purchase their products from TLHP. Links are in the description below. Thank you, Kartesian. The front baffle is glued on next, and I apply wood glue to the edge of the enclosure before placing the baffle in place. I use wax paper to protect the paint job, and then a scrap piece of plywood and clamps to secure it. Then we wait for the glue to dry. I purchased these speaker feet from Parts Express and are marking out their position on the bottom of the speaker before securing them with a few screws. They have tiptoe spikes on the end. The quality of these are just okay in my opinion. I think the manufacturer could have spent a bit more time on deburring the threaded holes for the spikes. They work for now, but I might find another solution sometime. The final step is to solder the respective wires to the drivers, apply some self-adhesive weather strip to the mounting holes and mount them into the baffle. Before I show you what these look like in its completed state, let's take a moment to hear from this week's sponsor. This video is sponsored by JLC PCB. With more than 800,000 customers worldwide and 18,000 plus PCB orders per day, JLC PCB is one of the leading PCB manufacturers in the world. Ordering PCBs at JLC PCB is easy. Click on Quote Now, upload your Gerber file, select the options from the easy-to-use web interface, and order 5 PCBs for as little as $2. Delivery is quick, and I received my boards after only 1 week after placing the order. The quality is top-notch and it came packaged securely and safely. I really enjoy working with JLC PCB, so if you need a PCB for one of your own projects, I highly recommend placing your order with JLC PCB. Right, so just moving back slightly, you can get an idea of what these look like from a distance a little bit. Okay, and then we can just move closer up to the drivers itself. There we have the 28mm tweeter and the 165mm midwoofer. Yeah, and you can also see the veneer came out really nice. I'm really happy. A few mistakes here and there. You can see one over there, but these things happen anyway. Otherwise, the veneering process really came out quite nice. The finish on these, by the way, is just a water-based polyurethane, and it finishes really nice. I think it's a product by Rust-Oleum, and it really gives a great finish. This was applied with a brush and you would never even know it. It just comes out so smoothly. I think this is the matte that I've chosen. Yeah, so these really came out nice. I can't wait for you guys to hear how they sound. And on that note, before we do the sound demo, please subscribe, like, and ring the bell to get notified when more videos come out on my channel. Also, I release exclusive content on my Patreon page and also here on YouTube membership, so go check those links out in the description below or click the join button below. My patrons are the best, and without their support this channel will not exist. This is the final in the series, and with it I'm releasing build plans for this build. If you have some woodworking skill and want to build a speaker, then go to my website at soundblab.net and purchase the plans. The plans are comprehensive and will show you step for step where to get the parts and how to go about the build. You can find the link in the description below. So until next time everyone, and thank you for watching. Adios.
It's 2 a.m. and I can't fall asleep, 'cause I'm not tired. I'm thinking about the days we used to shine when we were young. I told you that we should start a band and reach for the sky. It's 2 a.m. and I can't fall asleep.
It's very difficult to form a true opinion of what these speakers sound like from a compressed YouTube video and listening to the sound demo through your own headphones or speakers that will surely influence what you hear dramatically, no matter how resolving your system is. I can only offer you my own personal opinion based on my own experience and hope that it provides you some insight. The first thing I noticed with these speakers is just how effortlessly the drivers perform. If you have ever been in doubt as to the high-end quality of these Kartesian drivers, then rest assured that the technology and design that has gone into these drivers do show in the initial outcome if they have been implemented right. And in this case, I can confidently say that the implementation is reflecting these positive characteristics. The speakers have been tuned as flat as possible, however there is a slight drop in the response through the upper mid-range to avoid any potential listening fatigue. I'm still playing around with the final position of these in my listening room, but I suspect that most will push them up closer to a wall where they will still perform good. However, it is always good to pull them out into the room when you can, to increase the sense of soundstage and imaging. Vocals appear between the speakers and sometimes just behind, depending on the track playing and how the music was recorded. Bass performance is good and sounds neutral and natural. The speaker is capable of producing bass notes down to around 45 Hz, and this is even lower with room loading and where the speaker is placed in a room. And even though this will be good enough for most listening, a subwoofer will always be a good addition to any speaker to enforce the lower end of the bass spectrum. These speakers can play loud without losing composure, and on the other end they can reproduce delicate tracks with finesse and great detail. My conclusion is that these are certainly performing at the high-end spectrum of speaker performance and will be able to take advantage of being driven by higher quality hi-fi equipment that is more refined than budget gear. However, my IOTA VX SA3 amplifier is very capable of driving these, and for most of us that will be good enough. If you can, then certainly pair these up with more expensive equipment on the more neutral end, and you will not be disappointed.